Hello, welcome back to Catapult Your Career, where we delve into the reality of various careers and explore practical advice for numerous professions. And on this episode, we're very much looking at the world of IT, but specifically the career of an IT engineer. And I have none other than a good friend that I used to share the cricket pitch with in Nick. How are you, Nick?
I'm very well, Mike. How are you?
Yes, yeah, all good, mate.
Good.
We've already had a brief catch up on the cricket and how I'm no longer playing, but I hope you're still carrying the flag for both of us.
Yep, still flying the flag, still at the same club. So yeah,
Yeah,
we're all good on that side.
good stuff. Good stuff. That's good to hear. Good to hear. I abandoned it and went to the dark side and started playing golf. So
Well, there's some transferable skills there, isn't there? Swing and hit. There's something in that.
there is. So, and for those thinking like, crikey, golf takes long. You need to play cricket. My goodness, cricket's the whole day. At least golf is 4 hours. But
Yep.
hey, that's enough about my hobbies and sport. But to kind of talk about today, and thanks again for coming on to kind of really illuminate the world of an IT engineer for those who are listening. I suppose first and foremost, give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and your background.
Yeah. No. So my obviously I'm Nick. We've had that already. I'm in IT. It's an IT support role that I do. Helping solve issues from a range of customers that we deal with. Background on me, I like the sport. You've touched on that. But really, the IT background has come from family members. So my grandfather still uses his computer every day, and he got me into that. It interested me in how you can do so much on these small little devices, and of course now I've been in and around it for 10 years. Devices are still getting smaller and smaller. So
Yeah.
back when I was younger, the computer was massive. Now it's even smaller, and it's even more mind blowing as such.
No, definitely. And you speak about computers getting smaller. I mean, you've got a little computer in your hand with phones these days in terms of
Uh-huh.
like how much that's improved. But as opposed to kind of as a starter for 10, I suppose, and to help demystify what this career is, I suppose, what is an IT engineer? How would you describe that role?
Well, what people think an IT engineer is a little bit different to what I've experienced. In as much as probably your stereotype of an IT engineer is quite geeky, quite nerdy, and tapping away on lines and lines of all this code on dark screens in dark rooms. And I've actually, okay, there's a tiny bit of that. That's not particularly my remit, but there's a bit of that. But mainly, it's solving the problems of people, and actually telling them how to use stuff. It's a lot of a training kind of birth in as much as people are phoning up going, how do you do this? Customers have got nowhere to turn to. You think trying to get hold of Microsoft, even for us, it's a difficulty. So they phone an IT department like what I work in, and that little bit of training goes a long way to helping
Mm.
complete their tasks as a user.
Yeah, yeah, and I suppose you hear terms like, and it'd be good to understand. I don't know if this applies to an engineer or other careers, but like you hear often first line support, second line support, and various things. I suppose in terms of the broader, more specialisms or different fields of an IT engineer, could you kind of describe that a bit more as well in terms of the various like aspects?
Yeah, so you still get first line, second line. That's pretty accepted across the industry. Your first line will, I'm going to use it. They'll switch off, switch on again.
Yeah.
That's a typical kind of first line, and in companies they don't always have as much access into systems as the second lines, the third lines. It goes as far as third line, and that's really a server engineer has worked for 15, 20 years up to that position. And people can do it. You can go from first to third. It's pretty much what someone I work with has done. So, yeah, you've then got your second line is usually a good port of call because they've got a lot of knowledge, they've built that up, and certainly what I experienced, they'll then go out and visit the customer as well. So if there's something new to install, your second line will do that.
Mm. Mm. And then what is the difference? You say like first line is more, sounds like the kind of basic level. They have a basic understanding of software applications,
Yeah.
perhaps. Second line's a bit more in depth. And then you mentioned servers with the third line. I suppose what would you say is a key difference between a second line support engineer and a third line support engineer?
So you're let's use an example. You're doing a live chat with someone, and you're in the queue. You're first in the queue. Your first line is normally who you'll get first, and
Hmm.
they'll go, oh, we want to take care of your problem. They'll give you the good service. They're there to give you the good impression. Try the basic bits. Your second line engineer is then a little bit up the chain, and they will have more input into what you can do. Run troubleshooting, run diagnostic tools, all these things that you get in the IT world to fix the computer. They will help you run those, or in a business sense, they will run them for you. Your third line engineer is really if you've got a business and your whole system would depend on a server. If you can't access all of your files, they're normally on a server. Your third line can get straight into the problem and resolve that.
Mm. Okay. And then what would you say? I suppose what are you now, and have you done some of those different roles, or where are you now in terms of that?
So now it's a little bit of a hybrid now what I do, because I work for a reasonably small firm. So there's only four of us that are full time. Everyone's got to do a bit of everything. So my official title is technical sales engineer. Now this is a whole nother area of IT, but it's kind of it's in the middle. Where we've positioned it in my role is a little bit in the middle. So I will still answer the phone as a first line, what we've just covered. I'll then be able to solve some problems. I'll be able to dial into PCs and fix them with the diagnostic tools I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also the sales bit comes in for actually doing the quotes. That's kind of separate to kind of what we're talking about in that. But really, for the needs of the company I work for, that's where I'm positioned. So I started out as the first line. That was an apprenticeship as it goes. So that really was to do with basic stuff, learning the ropes, learning the customer service aspect, learning the systems that are used, your Microsoft Office, your Adobe Reader, your Internet Explorer, those things.
Mm.
And as I've expanded my knowledge from training courses and the apprenticeship, I've got more into it from that.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you kind of, obviously there's not one size fits all. Like you mentioned about the IT engineer, and you're at a smaller company, so you wear kind of many hats. I suppose I don't know if either you've had previous experience at different sizes companies, or you have colleagues that have worked in other companies across the industry. I suppose how could you see that IT engineer role change based on not just position, but actually based on size of company?
Yeah, definitely, because I know people that are in the same field that we're IT engineer group of friends. It sounds like a really thrilling group to be in, but no, it's there's all different experiences there. There's me in a small team, but there's other friends in big teams, and there seems a lot of real definition in their role, in as much as they do the small bit that they're assigned to, and they don't deviate from that. There is always a port of call next in line to deal with something more specific.
Mm.
Whereas me in the small business, you have to turn your hand to really the needs of what comes in. Be that supporting a Windows, a Mac, a phone. It's all different. Whereas bigger companies will have Apple support teams. They'll have Windows support teams, and that is a difference that I've found. I've not experienced that myself. I'm in my first company that I started working for. I've
Mm.
done that for 8 years now, and I'm still in the same place. So there's longevity there, but there's enough growth in it as well. Small doesn't mean there's no growth.
No, definitely, and it's interesting, kind of taking it to a wider concept, I suppose, that I often think you hear a lot of people kind of chase money early doors when they leave whatever it is, whether it's further education or higher education. Um, and they chase that kind of money quickly, but then they often get stuck and then they haven't actually got that much like experience and knowledge of different things. Whereas if you actually join like startups or smaller companies, you might not get that kind of big salary to show off to your friends and family and all the rest of it early doors, but you're going to get an absolute wealth of knowledge because you're going to see like every single department, the back end, front end, and then, give it 5 to 10 years, a bit like what you're doing. When you kind of go on to other companies, you're going to have a much more vast experience and knowledge base to bring to
Correct.
that role. So although you've got like, it's obviously long term v short term. You can either chase the quick money early, but I suppose with you, there's various different aspects that we want for our careers. Of course, it's not purely just money, but at least for you, you're going to have a massive knowledge base that you would hope you could, bring down the line.
Exactly right. That's when it comes down to it. That's what I valued as more important,
Mm,
and I thank my apprenticeship for that a lot, because the apprenticeship is learning, getting the qualifications, but it's on the job experience, and I think that's really important.
mm,
Equally, you've got to be in a company that are receptive to you as an apprentice, and the company I work for were good at that. Which is why I've stayed there. I'm loyal to them because they showed a trust in me, and I can then repay that back through the work that I do day to day now.
yeah, no, definitely. And I think for people who are perhaps interested in the world of like IT and becoming an IT engineer, and I think this is helpful in terms of what company they choose as well. Um, in terms of actually finding a company, choosing a company, and getting in, do you think there's some of the best routes? Because you've kind of touched on education and skills a couple of times
Mm.
there. What do you think are some of the best routes? Obviously, you personally went via an apprenticeship. I'm sure you've seen other colleagues, and from being in the industry for that period of time, a good 8 years, you've probably seen the highs and lows of and the various entry routes for different people. So, what would you say some of the key ways you can perhaps enter?
I have, yeah. So my route was the apprenticeship route. It wasn't after call it a failed attempt at uni, but that's a separate story in as much as what my school wanted versus what I wanted at the end of the day. There was a heavy push at school for uni, and okay, it didn't work for me. I don't have anything against uni. I'm not I'm not going to sit here and go uni is terrible. Don't touch it. There is a need for it. There are good skills to be picked up from it. It just wasn't my bag. So
Yeah,
I took the decision to go the apprenticeship route, which you find a training provider, and they can then help you, guide you into a role. So I didn't approach the company I work for my job. I was signed on with the apprenticeship firm, and they have resources in their team, and I was able to get an interview from them. Obviously, you still have to pass the interview and go from there, but so they don't hand it to you on a plate. But you've got the apprenticeship route, on the job learning. You've got your uni degree, very classroom based, very practical work in labs and assignments. But there's a need for both of them. I value experience a lot, and I think
hmm
employers do as well.
and it's good to get. I think this is the key really for this podcast is to get the reality behind people's careers and how the experience you've had, how we can share that to others who are potentially, aspiring to be like kind of IT engineers. And what are some of the educational or even skills requirements you think that would hold you in a good stead to enter and transition into this profession?
You've you've got to know how to how to use it yourself. You've got to be comfortable in the software
Mm,
that you're trying to fix. So I'm in a role where it's businesses use a lot of Microsoft Office, and I'm comfortable in that because I've used it at home. So you can take that skill forward into the workplace
mm,
to be able to fix, because you know where the things are, you know where to click, you know what to click.
yeah.
That's one of them, and then patience is a big one as well as a skill. Aside from the
Mm,
technical aspect, you've got to be patient with customers and other users, because if you're not, then it ruffles their feathers, and then it doesn't help the overall experience. So patience is a big one.
Yeah.
And not only dealing with people, it's maybe finding the resolution as well. There's always something new that comes up that you've not seen before, and you've got to research the problem.
Mm.
A myth that I hear a lot is, oh, you're just going to go and Google the problem. IT engineers can use Google better than me, and sometimes that is true. But there's a patience aspect on that, to go through the articles, go through forums, find what you need to find, and then implement the resolution.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned that the kind of things kind of changing, and that's one aspect I was thinking. I mean, IT data has like changed massively in the last kind of decade, and really it changes year on year. And I suppose in terms of that piece, obviously there's kind of a couple of skills and educational requirements you mentioned that might help you transition into the kind of world of IT. But how do you go about perhaps staying up to date with kind of changes and updates so that you keep your competencies, I suppose?
So from my point of view and what I do on a daily basis, Microsoft qualifications are the important step for upskilling and keeping up to date. Microsoft release it's a whole curriculum of exams and courses based around their products. So they call it skills based qualifications, and you can choose your software, be that servers, be that Windows, whatever it is. Microsoft have then written a course for that, and you can be a Microsoft certified engineer.
Mm.
So I have a couple of those because after my apprenticeship, there was no way I could keep up to date with it without using them. I would know bits because I'm on it all the time, but it's important to do these skills to keep yourself
Mm.
relevant in the eyes of your employer. So Microsoft is a good one for that. There's loads of online resources. They do produce books, but of course the book is a static item. So, I've got a book here that is out of date for a qualification because all the screens have changed. The names of portals are different and all of those things. So the web resources are very important on Microsoft Learn for that.
Nice. Okay. And hopefully that's one aspect people can kind of look into, I suppose, to get a bit of an idea. Is there any other resources or kind of accreditations, qualifications that if someone's thinking about entering the world of like becoming an IT engineer, are there any other places you would almost signpost them to start having to play around, having to start look at almost before kind of getting to that stage?
Depends how rounded you want to become as a person. There's IT people that I know that have project management qualifications. Now, you look at that on the face of it and think that's not really IT, but in senior roles, and this is definitely something in our office we've got a senior role, and he can project manage. So having that skill is an important one. The Prince 2 and those qualifications. There's those routes to go down.
Okay. And if we kind of go back and pivot slightly to the role of an IT engineer to really like make it clear for people who might be interested in pursuing it, I suppose what does the average week look like for the IT engineer? I suppose I know you're in a bit of a hybrid model in terms of a small company, but from your experience and your peers and colleagues, what would you say the average week looks like for someone who wants to potentially enter that industry?
So it would vary between your role, depending on what you do. In my experience, most IT engineers have a little bit of a field aspect to them as well. So you would get in on your Monday morning. You would start your week ideally with a clear support queue. So that's a good start to the week when there's a clear queue. But then as the calls come in, you start to work through them chronologically. That's a good way to keep everyone happy. So, there's a skill, perhaps organization,
Yeah.
being able to chronologically manage what comes in. Okay, you get companies, maybe there's a customer on a gold support contract where you respond to them quicker. That's really a specific need. But organisation, as a rule of thumb, should be keeping on top of what you've got, balancing your workload, doing it chronologically.
Mm.
But then in the week, everything comes in, your support calls day by day, but you might have to then go out and visit the customer. Maybe you can't do what you need to do remotely. Maybe you need to be in front of the computer, and that's important too, being able to get to a site and support the customer that way. So maybe in a week I would go out 2 or 3 times to customers. I would take equipment there, I would install the equipment on site, and then be back in the office catching up on the calls that I've maybe still got ongoing, because you can have stuff ongoing. A call that comes in doesn't always get resolved immediately. There could be other people you need to involve with that. You may need support from the manufacturer, and they've got their own time, their own lead times for support. So it's to do with organising what you've got on, and then really dealing with things that it is. I say that I can't always predict what I'm going to do in a week, and I think that's true, because if you start the week with no emails in your inbox, that's all well and good, and then something comes in. It might be something you did last week, but then the next thing is totally new, and you learn from there your skills. So you're picking up things without realizing it too much, because in fixing something you've never seen before, you're learning it.
Yes. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I suppose that there's a clear aspect of variety, and I suppose you have to kind of work on a bit on the ball in terms of like you might have different problems put across to you, and obviously thank you for kind of starting to illustrate what that average week looks like and what an IT engineer might do, both in terms of their workload, but actually like physically they might be in the office working from home or actually on site with customers. And I suppose is an opportunity, do you think, as an IT engineer to do various projects as well, more longer term projects, or is it more just kind of dealing with cases and problems as they arise?
There are, and that would definitely come based on skill set. So talking about the qualifications, if you have a Microsoft certification in deployment of Windows, for example, there is a high chance you'd be put on that project. So that could take you away from the run-of-the-mill support, and actually your week could be solely focused on doing that job. And that in itself is exciting, because
Mm-hmm.
it's different to maybe the week before. So okay, you could go in every day and be doing the same thing, but that's for one project that has a set time, then it's done. And
Yeah,
that, I think, in itself is good variety.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you can do that. There are, obviously, there's always IT projects. Businesses, they rely on the IT.
yeah,
We all do, even in personal use, we rely on the IT and the technology. So there's always need to deploy new kit, keep the kit relevant.
yeah.
So there's project aspect as well.
Yeah. No, I get it. I suppose IT is like it's the golden thread in terms of that infrastructure. Without it, especially in the modern day and age, most businesses just wouldn't run, or if they were running, they wouldn't be running efficiently.
Mm.
So it is the lifeblood of it, and I think it's good to know. I think for people who are kind of aspiring to that career, there is definitely a level of variety. There's also a bit of you might have a run of the mill task that you kind of do, but there's also an aspect of writing within that field, which is it's good to know. And I suppose you started to delve into a little bit of some things that you personally perhaps enjoy in terms of like the projects and stuff like that. It'd be interesting to hear. I suppose what would you say are perhaps the most enjoyable or least enjoyable aspects of the role, of an IT engineer?
So one of the most enjoyable things is being able to talk to a variety of people. There, in the role that I'm in, there's people that do have a lot of technical understanding, and they're
Mhm.
they're important in businesses. there's also people that have low understanding in the IT, and that's really where we are relied upon to help them efficiently, quickly, and get them back up to speed. So that's a good part of it. I personally like talking to customers on the phone and then being able to put names to faces.
Mm.
So this happened a lot during my apprenticeship and the first kind of 2 years, because I would speak to them, but then I would never have met them. So when I turn up at their office, they go, "Oh, so you're the one I speak to," and then it's a nice kind of friendship almost with your customers,
Mm.
and I think that keeps the relationship good.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that in itself kind of, obviously that's just you personally, but that kind of myth busts a bit of a common misconception about IT people just want to sit in the room, dark room on their own, don't want to talk to anybody. And there's always like a balance between that. Like even myself, I would class myself as an introvert, so I can go out and do the kind of networking and all the rest of it, and be kind of deliver presentations front and center. But then I like to come home on my own and relax and recharge. And a bit like you said, like there's a misconception IT people just want to be on their own, but actually that almost field engineer aspect of being on site, is something that you enjoy in terms of building, key
Definitely.
relationships with people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely.
And on the other side, perhaps, what would you say is perhaps the least enjoyable aspect of being an IT engineer?
The least enjoyable is when you have to be in a difficult situation. A lot of the time, that will be if there's a complaint or if there is a system-wide outage. If we can do something about it, then great, the customer is happy. But if we're there saying to them, "No, this system is down because of something we can't control," then there's really a not line of succession, but almost where the customer needs to get onto the IT department to fix it, but we have to then get ourselves onto another area, be that a provider of another software or something else. If we can't do anything about it, then we've got to take the frustration from the customer, listen to it, but kind of absorb it, because the customer doesn't want to hear we can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because from that as soon as you get into that, they then go, "What are we paying you for? Why are you there?" You charge your services for doing what people see to do nothing. That's also a misconception. Paying for a support contract doesn't mean we're doing nothing. There's
No.
always things in the background to do. And there's another part of the week of an engineer, the maintenance of systems, that all happens in the background.
Mm.
Be
Mm.
that in hours, be that out of hours. There's some times where systems are critical and you've got to maintain them, keep them updated out of hours. So that's not necessarily support and fixing something that's broken. That's preventative maintenance, in as much as we are doing all we can as engineers to stop it from going down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
there's that. But yeah, in terms of what's least enjoyable, listening to customers' frustration and actually knowing that we're a little bit helpless if there's a big outage. If BT's internet has gone off and that the green box at the end of your road has been crashed into and you've not got any internet, there's really nothing an IT engineer can do if you're in the role I'm in.
yeah.
Okay, if you're an engineer for BT, then you've got direct responsibility for that. But where I am as a general IT engineer, we can't control that. So it's knowing that we can't give a service that we want to give,
Yeah.
which isn't great.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think what I'm kind of pulling out of it, like listening to you and then kind of reflecting, is there's two key aspects in terms of inherently wanting to help people. Like your whole job is around problem solving, and whether it's kind of it depends on the industry and the company you work for, but it's a lot of like relationship management and like problem solving problems for people in terms of personally or their businesses, which I think is a real key aspect. And I think what you're describing really the nail on the head is like conflict management. Basically
Mm-hmm.
people turn up disgruntled and might not be having flowery language for you at the end of the phone, and you have to deal with that situation and manage it. So again, it's like another misconception about people management. And I always talk about emotional intelligence, so what it's like to be on the receiving end of you. And if you're like, you're not really understanding the situation when a business calls up and you're kind of dealing with it not in a very good way, you're only going to anger the client. And, worst case scenario, you might kind of use the wrong choice language and they might end their contract with you.
Yeah,
So it's like, that's a skill in itself in terms of that relationship management and dealing with, stakeholders, I suppose.
exactly. And something like that isn't always in a job description.
Mm,
You'd look at an IT engineer job role, and it will really solely be based on fixing and what we refer to in the industry as break fix, fixing something that's gone wrong. There wouldn't be too much kind of customer service in your role. Some companies may write it in there.
mm,
That I suspect my company would write that kind of thing in because of the way we are.
yeah.
We end up being the point of contact for support and everything else. So there's skills, kind of hidden skills almost, and yeah, conflict management is one of them that you won't get everywhere. People will go into companies and go, oh well, I never get any conflicts, and that's because there will be middle management in there to do that for you, and that's great. That
Mm.
takes the pressure off of you, and it allows you to go and enjoy what you do, and that's the computer side of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's good to kind of uncover that from your, like you said, 8 years experience. Like it gives the reality of the role. And of course, it might be different based on the company, the size, the industry. But again, it gives people a bit of a heads up of some of the challenges they might face in the role if they kind of were to enter it. And speaking about those challenges and having a heads up, I suppose, given what you know now, and you've had kind of a fair crack at kind of various roles and various aspects of being an engineer. If you were to have your time again, I suppose entering the industry, what would be your piece of advice, perhaps, or your advice for that younger Nick, I suppose, entering the IT world again?
That's a good one. What would I advise? I would say to myself, trust me. Okay, that's quite a self-centered thing to maybe do, but when it comes to your own career, you have to listen to what you want to do and block out almost. Okay, school are there to help you, and they will help you. Sixth form colleges will have resources, careers advice, and all that. Ultimately, it's what you want to do. So I would definitely listen to myself more in as much as what I want to do, because if I did, that would have seen me take the apprenticeship option a year and a bit earlier than I did, which means I'm gaining experience quicker.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I would say that because you've got to be happy in what you do. Enjoying your job is very important. It's 8 hours of your day. It's whatever percentage it is of your week. It's a very high percentage of your week. You've got to enjoy it. So listening to listen to your gut instinct almost. And mine was telling me, I remember it was telling me, uni won't be for me. Okay, it transpired it wasn't, but I should have listened to that earlier and made the call on it, be a bit stronger on that. So that's really what I'd do if I went back. But
mm,
I I say also you can't look back. So when I was in the situation of uni's not gone very well, there was no point in blaming school or blaming someone else for it not being right. You look forward and you go, right, what can I do about it? Let's get experience, get practical experience in a role. How do you do that? You focus on going forward.
mm. Yeah, I absolutely love that, Nick. And I mean, you're kind of speaking my language, I suppose, in terms of coaching. And I mean, the two key aspects I kind of wrote down as you were speaking is the trust in myself. And we always speak about in the coaching world around finding your authentic self. And I think it's a real kind of, it's interesting. Every time I've asked people, the majority of the times I've asked this question. So, regardless of the industry, business analyst, kind of IT engineer, coach, whatever it is, in terms of advice, it's never specific to the industry. It's always around their person, around them
Yeah,
personally, and what they can control. And we kind of, when there's a cost of living crisis, there's various things going on in the world, but what we can focus on is what we can control and within our own our hands, I suppose. And trusting in myself and your gut instinct and not listening to what other people think you should do. You know, Nick, you should go to university because that's what everyone's doing. You know, you should do this, you should do that. Well, actually, you know, trusting yourself, you know, thankfully, like you said, there's no point having any regrets.
Yeah.
But where you eventually trusting yourself and moving back to your authentic person, you know, you're now in an industry that you actually enjoy, and your skill sets and your values is ultimately aligned to your career. And like you said, it's not like you're just spending an hour a week doing this. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on if you're in a role you enjoy, you know, you're going to be there morning, noon, and night, and for the majority of your life. And the second aspect, which I absolutely love, is yes, obviously you're satisfying me and answering my question about a piece of advice, but quite right in terms of no regrets. You know, the big thing I took out of that was like taking accountability for your decisions.
Mm.
So, you know, there's no point moaning, I'm so unlucky, or I can't do this because of this, or I can't do that because of
Yeah.
this. It's taking about accountability of the situation. So you tried university, great. You know, in hindsight, at least you know you'll never have a doubt now of, oh, I wish I tried university.
Yeah, there is that.
You got it out your mind, and now you're taking accountability for the situation I'm in. Yes, I'm a year and a half, you know, down the line, but what can I do now? Well, actually, I can do this work experience, or I can get an apprenticeship. And yeah, I don't know if anything kind of came up for you there, but those were just two real big reflections that kind of came for
Yeah.
me when you speak.
I'd have that right. And that's definitely, you know, you can control what you do moving forward. So let's, you know, do it that way. You can't, because you got to be happy. So how do you go about making that happiness?
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And I think that at the end of the day, you know, I had various kind of a career pivot myself to kind of come into the world of coaching. And I think that's why I truly feel so passionate about it, because, you know, at the end of the day, like you're going to be spending so many hours, you know, so many years doing something. It's important that it's not taking energy and degrading your soul inherently. Like you want to be doing something that actually you look forward to doing, and waking up on a Sunday morning thinking, right, I'm back into work on Monday. And don't get me wrong, there's monotonous and tedious parts of every job. It's not like there's going to be like, it's going to be sunshine and rainbows. But you know in your gut whether you're looking forward to the challenge and actually
Yeah.
the next week, as opposed to thinking, Christ, I'm just doing it to get an extra pound note and just kind of do it for the sake of it. So I think thank you for kind of sharing that advice, and thank you for giving us a bit of a potted history and your experience of the world of being an IT engineer. And before we kind of pull this session and pull the episode to a close, is there anything that we haven't covered around IT or the job in terms of being an IT engineer? Is there anything we haven't covered today that you'd like to discuss?
Not sure really. I mean, you know, you as soon as, you know, another thing to say really, as soon as you stop enjoying what you're doing, then maybe then there's a time to move on, because you know, you have to enjoy it. But no, I don't think so. I think, you know, we've covered what a day is for an engineer. You know, my role is what it is. It will be different in other companies, but the essence of the problem solving and the fixing things is there. But also the idea of training people is just as important. You know, a lot. I haven't really got a percentage, but I'd say very much over half. Of the cases I deal with, I'm not fixing something. It's a how-to query, and that's just as important.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you for your time, Nick. And if people are kind of piqued their interest about the career of entering the career of an IT engineer, where's the best place to connect with you if they perhaps have any questions? And you know, how did you do this, Nick? I suppose to help them on their path.
You know, I'm reachable on most social media. You know, as a person of IT, you know, the phone is always near me as such. So the social medias are always there on that phone. But no, LinkedIn's a good one. LinkedIn's a great one for job searching as well. You know, you look around LinkedIn jobs and people have great success with it. You know, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me. You know, Nick Clayden is my name. We can put that in a description maybe and connect with me on that. I'll accept requests and I can help from there. It's an open conversation to help people.
Amazing, thanks, Nick. And yeah, definitely we include a link in the show notes to your LinkedIn if anyone wants to kind of reach out and equally kind of pursue a career or any questions around being an IT engineer. So thanks again for your time, Nick, and hopefully for those that are listening, kind of got some insight into another kind of specific career. And if there's anything that kind of piqued your interest, we'll have links in the show notes for people to kind of reach out and to kind of ultimately pursue their passion. So
that's great.
Thanks again for your time, Nick. And
No problem, Mike. Thank you.
on the next episode of Catapult Your Career.